Welcome to the Financial Planners South Africa podcast, a show dedicated to driving the positive evolution of financial advice, specifically in South Africa. To join a global community of financial advisors, sharing and learning with one another to drive the positive evolution of financial advice, head to xyadvisor.com. Portfolio Metrics is thrilled to bring you this podcast in support of our common passion, people, and the evolution of wealth management. Our global business links precision investment management to expert financial advice through partnerships and technology. Portfolio Metrics is an authorized financial services provider. Visual, interactive, meaningful, productive. 4 values underpinning Asset Map, a financial planning platform loved by advisors and their clients. This episode is proudly brought to you by Alan Gray. They say it's important to live for today. Although that might be true, we can't forget to plan for tomorrow. There's a lot of it left, after all. Alan Gray is an authorized financial services provider. Visit www.alangray.co.za to learn how we build long-term wealth for clients. Welcome to yet another episode of Financial Planners South Africa. Today I'm super excited to have Derek Notman with me. If you are ever on LinkedIn, if you're a financial advisor, I'm sure you would have seen Derek's comments pop up somewhere. He's a man that speaks his heart, and he's been in the industry for more than a decade, 15 years, running Intrepid Wealth Partners, training advisors for the next stage, becoming a virtual advisor. Derek, thank you so much for being here today.
It's a pleasure, Lewis. Thank you. And how's it to all my friends in South Africa?
Before this call, you mentioned that you just got off the call with your team in Cape Town. Tell us what that connection is, because you're not based in Cape Town. You're based in Minnesota, right?
Well, no. So I grew up in Minnesota. I'm from Ireland. My mom is from Cape Town. Okay. So very global. Right now, home is Madison, Wisconsin, but I'm in Southern California. So we're all over the place. So yeah, I do have a team in South Africa, multiple people doing multiple things for both businesses, actually, for all of my digital marketing, social media strategy on Intrepid Wealth Partners as an advisor. My team down there helps with all of that. And then also on my fintech company, Conneqtor. They help me with a ton of stuff there, from marketing to strategy to, development, all of that. So yeah, the majority of the people on my team are actually in Cape Town.
How did you go about doing that? Was it just, these are the right people and they just happen to be in Cape Town? Or was it, I'm strategically going to look at another time zone and another currency?
Yeah, so this stems, and this is part of my story, so I think this actually works well. As an advisor, I made the transition to virtual, to hybrid, to working in the 21st century back in 2013. And part of that transition was questioning my whole staffing model. Because up until that point, I had always had in-house staff physically located in my brick and mortar office. And apologies if you hear my dog in the background there. So what happened is I questioned that model, and I wanted to be able to do things better and more efficiently. I'm like, well, why can't I have a virtual team? So I did, and I for client-facing, client interaction type of stuff, I have a virtual team here based in the U.S. just because of time zone and language and all of that type of stuff. But for anything that's not directly communicating with a client, I was like, well, why don't I have a team outside? And, you hear of outsourcing to like India or the Philippines, a variety of other places for virtual staff. And I'm like, well, you know what? I love South Africa. And I truly do. South Africa is it's just so near and dear to my heart. And so I literally Googled virtual assistants, South Africa. And then I went through an interview process with a couple firms and ended up using 2 different firms. One of them ended up being a total mess. And then the other one is the one I'm still with today. And it's been 4 or 5 years. I've been using the same team now, and I absolutely love them.
That's brilliant. And it's so nice to hear, that we can compete in Cape Town on a global level through the skills that we bring to the table, not yet in giving advice. Hopefully we can one day get to that point where your team of advisors maybe sit in different jurisdictions as well.
100%. Yeah, there's Michael Kitces, who I'm sure you know or you've heard of. I'm sure a lot of your listeners have, has a great quote out there, and I'm going to butcher it, but he basically says that in the future, clients will find the best advisor, not in their local area, but the best advisor for them regardless of location. And the same can be held true for when you're trying to build a team, to build your business, to do whatever, to do all the things that you need to do. And I ended up with some amazing people that I work with now that have become friends. And I just met with them, and they said that they're like, Derek, we feel like this isn't your company. This is our company. This is how much we love doing all of this with you. So location doesn't matter. It's finding the right people is what matters.
That's brilliant. And I think we'll circle back to the people in your business. Give us a little bit of a backstory. Did you start off your career in finance or in financial planning?
No. My undergraduate degree is in archaeology and anthropology. I really loved the Indiana Jones movies and thought it would be fun to be Indiana Jones. Turns out that's not real life. So unfortunately, that didn't happen. So right actually before I even graduated with those degrees, the real world was fast approaching. I'm like, okay, I need a job. So I ended up becoming a counselor working with at-risk youth at a residential treatment center. I was working with teenage boys who lived at this facility that came from very bad backgrounds, murderers, drug dealers, rapists, you name it, and working with them to try to help rehabilitate them. I did that for a number of years, and then eventually that led me into financial services, oddly enough, because I've always had this fascination with money as well. And I learned by working with these kids that I really loved helping people. And my wife and I moved across the country right after we had been married. And I'm like, okay, now's the opportunity to combine these two passions into one career.
I love that you started out in the counseling side, and so much of what we do is using those counseling skills. And looking back at that now, like what are the things that stand out for you that you're still using in your client interactions today that you learned from dealing with this group of at-risk youth?
Well, I think my listening skills, like we had to listen. And sometimes we had to help people. I had to help the kids, and I do this with my clients, because we have to help them articulate what they don't know how to say. They're feeling something, but they don't know how to put it into words necessarily because they've never really been asked this before, if they've never really worked with a proper advisor. And so helping them come to this realization of what's truly important to them, what they're trying to fix, what's keeping them up at night. So I learned a lot of that working with these kids, and I've used those same skills. So, just slowing down a little bit. It's not about me. It's about them. If I do the right thing, if I listen, if I help guide them, then they're going to want to do business with me, which means I will get paid at some point.
Yeah, these are not easy things to get trained in. Yet, not a lot of financial planners start off in the sales side, and they don't necessarily learn these skills unless 10, 15 years into the industry, if they get that far. But you approach it the other way, saying, oh, actually, I've built up all these skills, and that's transferable to this new industry I'm moving into.
It is. And what's funny is that I didn't come into financial services with that mindset. I guess I did, but I didn't. But I was young. I was 25. And I didn't know. What I did know is that for the previous 3.5 years as a counselor, listening and problem solving were pounded into me. I was working 60, 70 hours a week, and it just became part of my DNA. So when I came over to financial services, there was a learning curve, like learning about financial products and sales and all of this stuff. But I came at it with this background of trying to connect with people and understand people and solve problems. And it just naturally happened. I got lucky, right? I literally got lucky because it was not intentional how this all kind of came together. I became a counselor because I needed a job. And I wish there was a more altruistic reason for that. But that was what it was. And I ended up loving it, and I learned a lot about myself and about helping people. But it definitely has propelled me in the work I do in financial services with my clients to be able to connect with others on that human level and truly listen and help.
Absolutely. So here we have Indiana Jones that have built these counseling skills, getting into financial planning. How were those early years? Like, what year are we talking about now, and kind of what was things like then?
Yeah, so I came in to financial services in 2006. March is when I actually officially entered the industry. At that time, and arguably still today, unfortunately, we'll get to this, but at that time, there's this allure of being a financial advisor, that you can make a ton of money, and you can, and that you can have a lot of freedom. And this is true, you can. So when you're being recruited and you're kind of getting into it, you're in this honeymoon stage where all of this is really exciting. And then you actually get in and you're working 60 hours a week. You're working nights and weekends. You're cold calling. You're dealing with rejection. You're going to networking events. You're having to put yourself out there a lot more than you were ever used to doing. And there is no guaranteed paycheck. There was a one point early on in my career where things were so tough that I literally went home after a really long week. I was stressed. I was tired. And I started looking through my baseball card collection to see what I could sell so I could pay to keep the heat on in my house in the winter. Right? It was that tough. And these are the things you don't hear about when you're being recruited into the industry. And there's a reason over 95% of people fail in the first 3 years or so, or, wash out. It's a really tough gig. Part of that, I think, is because of how we're taught. It's a sales first mentality. And I'm not saying sales is bad, but we can't forget the human element here either. That's extremely important. So things were antiquated. They still are, arguably. Digital marketing is only just starting to kind of get some real traction in our industry, unfortunately, even though it's been around forever. I mean, who knows? This whole, online internet thing might actually work, right? We'll see. I mean, maybe the jury's still out on that, but we're evolving. We're just not evolving as fast as we probably should be.
Yeah. And, South Africa is in a very similar boat to the US. I think in some instances we might be a little bit ahead in terms of the marketing component and embracing online advice. But the sales first approach is still the norm for most advisors starting out in this industry. You have to build up a wealth of knowledge. You have to find potential clients. You have to, feed your family. And like you said, it's a really tough gig. And that's why we have this massive drop-off.
Yeah, no question about it. But we can be successful, and there are better ways to do things. I think the advisor needs to know that they're not on an island. We are a team, and let's face it, whether it's South Africa, Australia, the States, Canada, UK, it doesn't matter. There's more than enough business, more than enough clients for us all to be successful. So don't get in a situation where you're kind of hoarding clients and everyone else is your competition. Reach out and talk to other advisors and help each other, because you're always going to be able to learn something and get better. The office that I started in, it did really feel like that. There was this competitive, competition's not bad. I don't have anything wrong with the competitive nature, but when it gets to the point of cutthroat stuff because there's not enough business for everybody, that's just nonsense. And it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, I hear you, that kind of abundance mindset saying
100%.
If you approach this, that there's more than enough clients, you figure out a way to serve them. I can hear that, you were really frustrated with the way advice was being delivered. What was one of the early things that you tried to do, in 2006, starting out with your clients, that you said, hey, I'm not going to do it this way. I'm going to go this route.
Yeah, I had a lot of success early on, and I think part of that's because of my problem-solving listening skills we talked about from my counseling days. I was not a CFP professional until, 6-7 years in, something like that. I didn't get it right away, but I always had the mindset of a CFP. And my friend, and this guy, Adam Holt, a brilliant guy, he has a nice term that he's coined, leading with advice. And that's how I always I always had that mindset. And I knew that there was a good chance I would sell something to implement a plan, right? To implement a solution. And I'm not saying the products are bad or sales are bad, but leading with advice to come up with those solutions, I think, is a better methodology, a better process. And that's what I did. Even though I wasn't a CFP, I acted like one. And I think that's what really helped. And very early on, I had a lot of success of that, because at the end of the day, people want to buy. They don't want to be sold to. So help them buy. Help them by leading with advice.
That makes so much sense. And, what we see is that at some point, people just assume that you have all the knowledge and you have all the accreditations. So it is still very valuable to go down that route, but it's not the be all and end all. I think we can often use the designation as I only need that, and then I can, be successful. And then it's a nice excuse.
It is. Yeah. No, start right now. Just start with that mentality, that attitude. Don't misrepresent yourself in any way. There's a massive trust and transparency issue in our industry. But the mindset, and if you're genuinely trying to help people and lead with advice, and you are very open about that, people will respond. People will appreciate that, and good things will happen.
Derek, it reminds me a little bit of the kind of a coaching approach, saying, hey, let's work together to figure out this problem, whatever that might be. Maybe you need a product, but we need to come up with some element of a plan and some element, leading with advice. Like you said, that Adam coined that term. I always chuckle when he says he's a recovering certified financial planner. So, there's two arms to the same thing.
That's so true. It's funny. Yeah, he's a great dude. I was actually just speaking with him a little while ago.
So you've been giving advice.
Share that mindset.
Yeah. You've been giving advice. Kind of, you're dealing with these clients, leading with advice. Do you then at some point break away, or how did you come about setting up Intrepid Wealth Partners?
Well, I wanted to create something that was bigger than just myself. I wanted to, and creating a brand is extremely difficult and takes a very long time. But I didn't want it to be just about me. So I didn't want it to call it like, Derek Notman Financial, right? Because now it's all about me. And like, I was never the guy, well, maybe really early on I was, until I figured out it was not the right idea. But I was never the guy, or didn't want to be the guy that had all of my awards and designations and everything on the wall in my office. So if a client came in, they just see like, oh, wow, Derek must be important. I was just never that guy, and I don't think clients want that. It was always about having pictures of my family and things I love to do, passions and all of that kind of stuff. And that's what I think really resonates with clients the most. Intrepid is a reflection of me, but it's a reflection of the type of people I want to work with. It's a reflection of the type of mentality that we have and our ideals. And it's to really attract a certain type of client. Attract your tribe with your vibe, so to speak. And that's how it really had to be set up like that. And so I wanted to do something like that, something that people could really connect with. And if something happened to Derek, like there's still this brand where I can have other people eventually come in and help continue that on. Hopefully that would be the plan. And about the same time, I also was like, okay, I got to kick this whole brick and mortar thing. It's taking its pound of flesh here. There's got to be a better way to run a practice, because the things that I learned in 2006 when I started were the same things that were taught to new advisors back in 1985. And those advisors were taught the same things that were taught in 1955, right? It's virtually unchanged. And I was just like, I'm not one to really just go along with the status quo. I like to challenge things, and sometimes that gets a little difficult, but that's just the way I roll. And that's why about the same time, this is 2013-ish, I was like, okay, there's got to be a better way to market. There's got to be a better way to conduct meetings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what took me down the path to where I am today.
I hope that at least at some point they updated the life expectancy tables, within the course curriculum. But other than that, the way advice is delivered, yet the world continues to move forward, and the way we consume information and the way we interact changed. So, this is 15 years ago, if I've got it right, that you then set up Intrepid Wealth Partners, and you're saying that was a virtual first firm when you started out?
No, it wasn't. It was fully brick and mortar when I started. I literally bought an office building, had multiple in-house staff, wore a suit and tie, had the conference table, the big desk, the metal filing cabinets, the big copier, you name it, man. I had it all. And after getting it, I'm like, man, this sucks. This is expensive. I'm tied to this location now. And for someone like myself who loves to travel, that just was like crushing my travel soul a little bit. So after going through that for a number of years and then having my son, becoming a dad, I think you're a new dad here, aren't you, Lewis?
Yeah.
You're experiencing this now. Your priorities shift. And I didn't want to work. I mean, I never really wanted to work 60 hours, 70 hours a week, but I really didn't want to now that I had another, person to take care of and be a part of their life. So I had started, I did everything that they taught from 1985. I was all in 100% and I was doing well. I was making good money, but I was getting unhealthy physically. I was stressed. There's just this massive burden. I was tied to a physical location and it just, all these things are like, man, I got to do something different here. This is just wearing on me. I still want to run a great practice, but I don't want to be doing it like the guy from 1955 has been doing it.
Yeah, it's interesting that, you become a successful financial advisor and then you become a business owner, which requires very different skill sets and it's a very different hat that you have to put on. So now you have your business owner hat on and saying, actually, this way everyone else is doing it, this is not working for me because my values are not the same and, I want to do things a little bit differently. So like, where did you start to make that change? Did you just get up and sell your office and say, okay, now we're forced to do this? Or was it kind of more incremental?
No, it actually was a perfect storm of events. So I was tired and unhappy. I had a new young born son at home. And then I had been presented with an opportunity to collaborate with another advisor on a national opportunity. And part of that ended up with me needing to relocate from Vermont to Madison, Wisconsin. Within a month, and it wasn't even a month of me arriving, this other advisor said, I'm moving to New Jersey. So the whole thing blew up in my face. I had just relocated my family. So then my wife and I had to have a heart-to-heart, like, do we stay and make a go of it, or do we go back? And it had already been so stressful. We were closer to family now with our young one. And so we're like, you know what, let's make a go. And so that was the initial like perfect storm that happened. And because of that, I had to figure out better ways to run my business. So this is where all the kinks, the cracks in the original brick and mortar model really started to present themselves because I wasn't physically in an office anymore. I was, 1,200 miles away. Like, okay, well, how do I do this? So it was a transition. This was, a transition that took some time. Initially, I was on an airplane every 3-4 weeks to go meet physically with people. That got old really quickly. So it's just like, how do I do these virtual meeting things? What is that, right? Do I have to have a physical staff in another part of the country? Do I need that? Do I even need the space? How do I market to my clients? How do I service them? What do I do with incoming mail? All of these things that I had taken for granted as a brick and mortar advisor, I now had to question. And I'm glad I did. I mean, I went through hell at that point. It was a really tough part of my career and life just because of the way that this other advisor threw us into this mess. But a lot of amazing good things came out of it. And my practice is so much better now because of it. And it's probably stuff I would never have done completely if I didn't go through that fire initially. But man, am I glad I did, because it is where the future is headed. You mentioned about how the consumer consumes things these days. We're not looking, and what we hear in the States, we have what's called the Yellow Pages. It's like a physical phone book. That's what we used to use, yeah, we have right? That. Okay, yeah, you guys get it. So like, we don't do that anymore. We pick up our phone, we go to our computer, we're looking for things differently. So as advisors, we better figure out how to be there. Otherwise, we're going to become obsolete.
Yeah, still being relevant. I completely agree with you. So a lot of firms last year were forced into adapting these things that you were grappling with 10 years ago already, saying, hey, like, How do we fix this? How do we do this? I'm wondering what your clients said at that point. Did they embrace it, or was there a bit of a pushback?
I was deathly afraid that all my clients would leave me by making this transition. What ended up happening was I was afraid for no reason. I lost one client. That's it. Everyone else stayed. It's been fine. It's been great. Been no issues. I've brought on new clients and new business. So it was really between my own ears, because a lot of the people in our industry have, even when I started to do it, like, oh, Derek, that'll never work. You can't do that. Nope, sorry, you're not going to be successful. Nope, that's not right. I proved them wrong. And it's just because I had to change my mindset. We have to realize here, folks, for advisors listening to this podcast, please take a second and realize the next thing that I'm going to say here. We consume things differently. Google processes 3.5 billion searches a day. We are online as a global society. The way we do things, we buy our groceries online, we can talk to our doctor online, we date online, we bank online, we have social networks of quote unquote friends online. Everything we do is online. And it's been that way for 20 years. Amazon started over 20 years ago, right? This isn't something that happened just during COVID. COVID, I think what really did is it accelerated a mega trend that had already been underway for some time and really, again, highlighted the cracks in an industry that's as old as dirt, financial services. All right. And that's good. That's how evolution, that's how growth happens. But there are growing pains when that happens as well. And as I've said before, look at the dinosaurs, right? Never in the history of history has not evolving worked out. The dinosaurs are not around for a reason. They didn't evolve. Yeah, we had that big old meteor hit the earth, right? That didn't help. But COVID was kind of that same thing, right? And now we have a choice. Are we going to evolve and adapt, or are we just going to just hold on to whatever we can and fall away? It's a choice. It's a choice. It's a big difference is that the dinosaurs didn't have a choice. We do.
Absolutely, Derek. And I think that's such a great segue into Conneqtor and what you're doing with Conneqtor, actually teaching advisors these skills.
Yeah, I appreciate that. As I mentioned before, my motivation and inspiration for going virtual and updating my practice for the 21st century was so I could have more of my life back, to be present for my family, do all the things that are super important to me. And what ended up happening is I found a lot of success doing it. I got a lot of arrows in my back because there was no roadmap as well. It took me years to figure out how to do all of this. But what ended up happening is a lot of advisors started to see my success, but they also started to see, like, what do you mean you're in South Africa right now, Derek, working? Like, I did a life insurance application from the beach in Blauberg, okay? They're like, Derek, what do you mean you're in Dublin, Ireland, working remotely? What do you mean you're on the bullet train in Japan working remotely? Like, how are you doing this? Now, my example is a bit extreme. I tend to travel a lot more and I'm more virtual. Honestly, I think the sweet spot moving forward is probably going to be more of a hybrid model where we have a lot of robust digital virtual capabilities, but maybe we want to maintain some small brick and mortar space. And that's cool. Nothing wrong with that. I think that's where we'll end up, actually. But Conneqtor really came to be because other advisors were looking for a solution to update their practice for the 21st century where none existed. There are a lot of programs out there, coaching programs, very siloed programs, maybe for LinkedIn marketing or whatever. The majority of them are still teaching some rather outdated methods, ones that worked brilliantly but in the past. So I really wanted to create something of immense value by an advisor for other advisors to help them. At the end of the day, it's to help them live their best life. Because if the advisor can live a better life and run a more efficient practice, bring in more clients, make more money, but not do it at the expense of missing time with their family and all of these things, well, if the advisor is happier, emotionally, health-wise, financially, then they're going to be that much better for their clients. So if we improve the advisor experience, we improve the client experience. And that's what Conneqtor is all about, empowering the financial advisor of today to thrive today, to have an amazing experience. And we show them step by step exactly how to do everything that they need to do to be super successful.
So it's that old adage of putting the oxygen mask on yourself first before, you can help other people.
100%. I've got over 1 million miles on Delta Airlines alone. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that statement, but it is 100% true. If you can't help yourself, how are you going to help the people that you want to help? You can't. It's that simple.
Yeah, I think that expands so wide. Like you mentioned, you have to be physically healthy, emotionally healthy, financially healthy. You're not serving anyone by undercharging or by delivering a subpar service.
I was going to say, people want to work with people that are successful, that have real motivation and inspiration to live an amazing life. They don't want to work with someone who's just pitching a product. I'm sorry.
Absolutely. I can't agree with you more. And like you mentioned earlier in our discussion, that it's not the expert. It's not the guy with all the awards. It's someone that's, successful and that's living something true to their values. Like you mentioned, travel is important to you and spending time with your family, and you're living that out, which is actually awesome. But you don't need the permission for someone to say, hey, go out and do this. You just need to take that step and take permission, I guess. Hey.
That's it. And for any advisors listening right now, you have permission to go take care of yourself. There's no reason you shouldn't be building the most amazing business you could ever build while having an amazing life, being with your family, pursuing your passions. That's what you should be doing. And that's going to lead to an amazing client experience.
And there you have it. Derek just gave everyone permission. Thank you for that, Derek. Derek, If you had to set up a new practice today, right? Clean slate. What would you do differently?
Well, I'd first go to Conneqtor. Sorry, I had to plug that in there. But it's true. There's a lot that needs to happen. And I think you actually touched upon this earlier. If we call ourselves just a financial advisor, then it's really more about the strategies that we help people with, uncovering problems, finding solutions, and sales. Sales is a component here that we cannot ignore. And those are all important, but we also are business owners at the end of the day. And we have to have that mindset as well. And as a business owner, how can I set up my business to succeed and be profitable? What should I do? What are the most cutting edge ideas, strategies, tactics, infrastructure that I can incorporate into my practice today to thrive? Not what was done 30 years ago, right? What's being done today. So as an advisor, I would question all of those things. And if I come into an institution that's hiring me, whether I'm independent or I'm semi-independent or whatever, and they're telling me to get a whole bunch of metal filing cabinets and go door knocking, I would take pause at that and say, maybe there's a better way, because as a consumer, I don't want someone to go knock on my door, especially during a pandemic, right? It's just not I'm not looking for someone to cold call me at 7:00 at night. Right? So you have to question those things. And then if you agree with those concepts and new strategies and better ideas, you still have to take action. You need to take steps to implement all of these things and know that it's going to take time. Rome wasn't built in a day. It takes time to put this infrastructure in place to learn these things. I also think that on a professional level, that financial planning mindset's extremely important. There's a reason the CFP designation is gaining so much popularity and traction. People are looking for that. Adam and I have had a really good conversation about this just recently, about the delivery of advice and people paying for advice versus paying for products. And products actually might become somewhat more commoditized than they already are. And there almost might be like what we would call an Amazon marketplace of products. So if we can go there, the value of our advice now becomes extremely important. But if we aren't advisors with these professional credentials, then we're not going to be able to charge for that advice. So I think that's also something very, very important.
Absolutely. And I want to add on to that, thinking about the value that you're adding and not saying, how do I dilute this, but how do I charge a premium and still have clients say, oh, I'm comfortable paying this premium because what I'm getting is an awesome experience. It's, a ton of value for me and I'm happy to pay and I know what I'm paying. And that's not there yet, but we're moving to it very quickly.
We are. We have to become subject matter experts. That's what we pay for. There's a reason that doctors specialize in a certain area, heart surgeons or whatever, brain surgeons. Actually, I think the first heart transplant was done in Cape Town, wasn't it?
Yeah.
There's a reason that they make so much money, because they are subject matter experts and people are willing to pay for that. Same thing goes with what we do. The work we do as advisors is extremely important. I consider us a part of the fabric of people's lives. We help them with their money, which means so much more. But we better be darn good at what we do. We better be experts. We better be able to actually provide that value that they're looking for and not just a product. Because as soon as we're just a product person, we've just commoditized ourselves as an individual, and there's nothing special about us anymore.
Yeah. And I see, how your personal branding and how your business branding actually is promoting that, saying I'm the subject matter expert and there's a ton of value here for you to get. Often what we hear is that kind of a bit of pushback saying, well, if I focus only on this, and I think in America they call it a niche, where in South Africa it's a niche, kind of a smaller group, and I'm excluding all these other potential clients that I could be working with. How do you talk someone through that mindset?
We actually spent a lot of time in Conneqtor talking about this because it is extremely important. I started off working with anybody that would fog a mirror. I didn't even know how to spell the word niche, okay? I didn't know what that was. And what ends up happening is you become a slave to your business because of that. You are now working with anybody that will do anything with you. And then you wake up years later with this massive, crazy book of business that is all ends of the spectrum. It's very hard to manage. It's also difficult from a marketing perspective to attract new people, because now if you don't work with, if like one of my friends and colleagues, Dave Bruno, great dude, he joked, he's like, most advisors just say that they work with guys with jobs, right? Like, what is that, right? Like, I mean, it's so true, and I'm not faulting the advisors so much, although there is some onus on them to make this leap here. But when we work with anybody, we work with nobody, because people are looking for specialists. They're not looking for a generalist. Okay, so. But you don't want to get so hyper niche that you don't have a business. So there's a sweet spot here as well. So I think it's really important to identify a type of clientele that you think you can serve best, an ideal client niche, but then go vet that market before you build a business around it. If there's only 4 people that fit your ideal client profile in South Africa, you don't have a business. So don't do that, right? That's too niche. You need what we call in Conneqtor, we call critical mass. You have to have enough people that you can market to and convert a small percentage of them over to clients to have a successful, thriving practice. I do believe in general, though, that having a niche is extremely important. It's what the consumer's looking for. They want an expert to do the different things that they need. I mean, look at all the massive brands in the world. They're all niche specialists. They all have a specialty in what they do. And people go to them for that reason. So if you are this advisor who does everything for everybody, people are going to be looking at you like, well, what does this person do? Do they help people like me? That's the internal dialogue that a potential client might have. And if they have that before they ever even reach out to you, they're never going to be a customer. But if you tell them, hey, this is who I am, this is who I help, this is what I do for them, now all of a sudden like, oh, cool. Well, so-and-so works with people like me. They help me do this type of stuff. I like this. This feels right. Okay, now I'm a potential client.
Yeah, and the world just opened up to you. No longer do you have to work with a client that lives down the street. This client can sit anywhere in the world, and we've seen that in our business as well. When people immigrate, they can remain clients. Yes, the service might be different and might be more of a kind of holistic planning and less product. And that's actually forced us to revisit this and say, if we're going to have a bunch of clients leaving South Africa, how do you still add value to their lives?
Exactly. And even in San Diego here, I think it's one of the largest populations of South Africans outside of South Africa. And I suspect that there are a lot of them that have advisors back in South Africa still, right? Just because they can, if those advisors did the thing that they were supposed to do and, make sure that they're there to help them. Because the best. Well, this goes back to my point on my virtual team, right? They're based in Cape Town. The best people to help me do what I needed to do ended up being in a different continent on the other side of the world, right? So your best client, or is you being an advisor for a client, you may not be located down the street from each other. Maybe you're in Joburg and Cape Town, who knows, Durban and the Free State, whatever, it could be anywhere or even outside of the country. So I think that's extremely important. But if you don't have the infrastructure, the marketing, the niche identified, all of that stuff, then it won't happen.
Yeah. So just to go back to what you said, starting off with a clean slate, you'd spend more time on the strategy and saying, like, how are we supposed to run a business today? And then say, oh, actually, this just happens to be financial planning plugged into that. It's like Tony Shea from Zappos that 100%. Says this is a service business. Hey, we just happen to sell shoes.
100%, right? That's it. Any advisor can learn how to sell a product, how a product works, how to do a cash flow analysis, et cetera, et cetera. That's the product or part of the product process. Be the business first. Know who you are, what you're trying to do, how you're going to do it. Get all the infrastructure in place, and then you can deploy or deliver your solutions via that mechanism.
So, Derek, looking forward 10 or 15 years from now, what do you think the relationship a client, or what would the relationship look like that a client would have with a financial planner 15 years from now?
Well, I'll preface this by saying my crystal ball has never worked. Okay. I think the value of advice is going to become more and more important. I think products will become even more commoditized. I think there's going to be more fee compression. Products are always going to have their place. They're extremely important when it comes to implementation, no question about it. But the way that we arrive at those products is going to be more and more and more advice driven. I also don't think that the human advisor is going away. People want customized expert human advice, but the way that advice is delivered is changing. The medium is not going to be just a kitchen table or conference table anymore. It's going to be what we're doing here right now. That's where I think things are going to go. And I think that the advisors, quote unquote advisors that are just focused on product, I think they're probably going to become like dinosaurs and eventually just be gone, where we're going to move to more of this digital marketplace of products that are a byproduct of amazing planning from subject matter experts. That's where I see it going. Who knows if I'm right? That's just the way I'm feeling about it and where it looks like, happening today.
Yeah, we definitely won't hold you to this 15 years from now. So I'm wondering, what are you spending your time on in terms of crafting your skills, and like, what are the resources that's top of the list for Derek that, you won't miss out on?
Be nimble, embrace technology. So digital marketing is I think in our industry at least coming into its own finally. As advisors / business owners, we have to own our digital assets. Own those digital assets. Even if you're just starting out, maybe you're still in university and you're pursuing your CFP and you're not even there yet. Get out on social media, get a website, start growing an audience that you can curate and nurture to use down the road. This is the long game. So we have to have these digital assets in place, no question about it. So focus on that. Focus on subject matter expertise, getting your qualifications, but also running a really awesome practice. Question everything. Do you need to have a massive brick and mortar office that's costing you a ton of money every month? I thought I did. Turns out I didn't, and I'm really happy I got rid of it. So I think those are the things that I would think about, coming in at this stage, or even maybe you've been around for 20, 30 years. You know what? If you want to sell your practice at some point, a younger advisor isn't going to want to buy your filing cabinets, right? They're not going to want to do the things that you did. So maybe it's time to do some upskilling. Is it going to hurt? Are there going to be growing pains? Yes, there will be. But that also means growth happens, and that's good stuff.
Derek, I've got a funny story on that. We went through the process of selling our filing cabinets at the office, and we almost had to pay someone to come and collect it.
I love it.
Because no one wants it.
No one wants it. It's just, it's the way of the past. And I have nothing bad to say of the past. We wouldn't be where we are today without it, right? We're all a product of all of the other amazing people that have come before us and things we've learned from. But we need to take that as our foundation and build upon it, right? We don't want to regress to what was done in the past. We want to learn from it and progress instead. Yeah,
I love this kind of innovative view, saying, look at things and say, does this still serve me today? And does this serve my clients? And does this serve me where the business needs to go? Can we touch a little bit on the digital assets? For some people, they might think cryptos. And are you talking around kind of marketing assets that you would use to promote your brand and the service that you deliver?
Correct. Yeah. So not cryptos. That's a whole nother conversation. Your social media accounts, web pages, digital assets that you own. I own over 100 URLs, okay? Ebooks, webinars, YouTube channel, blog, email nurturing. Any place that we can publish a digital asset, some content where an audience can consume that information, we need to own those assets. And when I say own, I mean like physically own them as much as you can, but also be active there and actually push out content on those platforms because that's what people are looking for. The oldest trick in the book when it comes to marketing in general, digital or not, is go where people already are and then be present. Well, people are online, so just go there. That's just where it's got to be. But also be careful. For example, an interesting story just yesterday. I am extremely active on LinkedIn. I've got a strong following there. And at the end of the day, I don't own that asset. LinkedIn does. LinkedIn lets me go there and do my thing, but I don't own it. And I did a post yesterday that was just like, hey, LinkedIn, what's up with your algorithm? Because the algorithm has changed recently. At least it appears it has, because engagement has changed, views have changed, how many followers you're gaining has changed. Funny enough, they actually commented on it and they're going to reach out to me directly to talk about it, which is interesting. So stay tuned on that. But the fact remains is I don't own my assets on there. So what am I doing with the places that I pseudo own or I'm just parking there? I'm paying a parking meter to be there for a while. Well, I need to drive that traffic somewhere. Drive it to assets that you own. I think that's when I say digital assets, that's what I mean. And just, it's a lot of work. It's going to take time, but own those things, right? Because you never know what's going to happen and where you're going to need some of these assets to be as you're building your business.
So Derek, that then becomes your repeatable, scalable marketing engine to drive clients to your practice. Is that right?
Correct. Oh, yeah, 100%. Referrals would be the other one. Other than that, it's all digital assets, followers, nurturing the audiences, educating them, attracting my tribe to contact me when they're comfortable to do something.
Yeah. And that's something we don't often see in South Africa. Something that you can, push the lever forward and say, okay, now we need to bring in more clients. Let's ramp up our marketing efforts and bring in clients. It's kind of a sit back and, we wait for some family member or client to refer a new client to us.
Yeah, that's reactive. And it's been done that way forever. But why not be proactive about it and know what's possible and predictable? Like, I know how much it costs me to drive a lead on a Facebook marketing campaign, depending on who I'm marketing to, right? I will say about any type of paid ad campaign as a quick sidebar, don't waste money on fancy, luxurious, glamorous paid ad campaigns from any gurus until you have all of your digital foundation in first. It's like going from an idea of your dream house in your head all the way to buying the high-end fixtures for the master bathroom, but you forgot to hire an architect. You forgot to get a blueprint. Don't do it. It'll be a total waste of time and money. You got to do all the other stuff first. But then, yes, it's very, very helpful.
And building those digital assets, is that something you'd recommend people do on their own, or do they hire a professional, or what's the best?
It depends. So financial advisors, I'm sure it's the same in South Africa. We're nickeled and dimed every single way to Sunday with all the money, that things we have to pay for. So anything we can do for free, I'm a big proponent of. So any assets you can create on your own, go spend the time to do that on your own. You only have, most of the time you only have to do it once and then it's done. Now, for example, my website, I was involved in that build and in that design, but I had someone else do it. That's not my thing, right? I needed some help to get it done right, and that's what we did. So it's really going to be a combination. And I'll tell you, like, if a little secret here, we talk about this in Conneqtor, if you don't really get clear on who you are as an individual outside of being an advisor, if you don't get really clear on who your ideal client is, you will never be able to fully leverage all of your digital assets. It's like trying to build, a massive building with no foundation. It just doesn't work. It just won't work. It'll crumble.
Yeah, you'll go around in circles and say, oh, now today I'm serving this group and tomorrow I'm serving another group and not really gain traction.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Derek, this has been extremely valuable. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today. If someone wants to reach out to you, what's the best way, assuming that LinkedIn's algorithm will play along?
Yeah, LinkedIn's great. Hit me up on there. Send me a direct message. You will get me directly. It's not somebody else. Email is great. So if you want to put my email address in the show notes, that's fine. Or even my website, that's fine too. We've got a lot of great assets on there. You can go check out a really cool blog. This podcast we will put on our site so people can see it. Yeah, reach out, ask questions, learn. We're all on the same team here.
Thanks for that, Derek, and thanks for sharing so openly and being the kind of light for the future financial advisor. There's a lot of people that look up to you, and rightly so.
Well, thank you, Louis. I appreciate it. I write back at you. I love what you guys are doing, and you and I have chatted previously, and it's clear we're of the same mindset and how we're doing things. And I appreciate you being able to get the word out there, because I think a lot of advisors are feeling somewhat like they're on an island a little bit. And this podcast that you're doing for folks, I think, is a nice lifeline to throw them. So thank you for the opportunity. It's a real honor to be on here. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Derek.